So my name is Yose. I'm based in Ottawa, Canada. I am a former journalist, communications consultant, worked for communications in government organizations, the not-for-profit NGO sector and humanitarian sectors. So I've done a little bit of communications across pretty much every single um, field, I guess, you want. And I'm currently working for Parks Canada, so which is basically the equivalent to the U.S. National Park Service. But my role specifically is to coordinate an international network or community, which is called Nature for All, which is an international union of conservation of nature initiative. And I'll talk a little bit about that, some of the things that we've done over the last 6 years that I've been involved with this. And specifically, it's interesting that Emily talks about, collaborative communications, which is what this network aims to do, is to amplify the amazing work that's being done around the world, to connect people with nature. Right. And I can flip. So that's me in a nutshell. So as I mentioned, it is a global movement, and it's really about inspiring love of nature. So the idea is that the more that people connect with and learn about nature, the more they're going to want to act for nature. And so we have a number of different resources that we offer, including like a reporter toolkit. And it's about connecting. There's 650 organizations worldwide right now, and it's about raising awareness of nature, its values, and we do that by sharing toolkits that we've created, stories that have been created, so comic books we've done, and just a variety of different tools and resources that some organizations might not have the capacity to develop on their own. So we provide those resources for them, or we ask organizations that do have these resources to share them with a broader group. So amplifying those works. So this is a bit of a sense of where all of our different organizations are based. A lot of it is obviously Europe and North America. We are hoping to build that network a little bit more in the next few years outside of the Northern Hemisphere. We have a core group of core partners, is what we call them, who provide some funding, Parks Canada being one of them, and they pay me to do this work. The Alana Institute, which is based out of Brazil, the Children in Nature Network, which some of you might be familiar with. They're based in the US. The Sustainable Forestry Initiative, as well, they have offices in the US and in Canada. And it is really about and it was started really through two IUCN commissions, which is the Commission on Education and Communications and the World Commission on Protected Areas. So communicate, educate leads to protection. So that's why those two were involved. So as mentioned, there's about 640, 50 organizations representing a variety of small NGOs to large NGOs to government agencies, schools. Everybody's welcome in this area, businesses. So anybody working in the conservation field, we want to amplify those voices and those messages. So how do we do that? We have a trilingual website. So we do this through different platforms. So French, English, and Spanish are the working languages of the IUCN. So our website is trilingual mostly. We have a discovery zone, which is a repository of resources that help people connect with nature, it could be activity sheets, videos, school curriculums, like full-on school curriculums. We have that. So a variety of tools and resources. We have specific guides and toolkits that we've developed. So for example, how to create your own celebration of love of nature. So it's a 10-step guide on, how to create a celebration, an event that celebrates love of nature. And all those resources are free to use. Partners are free to join. It doesn't cost anything. There's no, the commitment is just keep doing what you're doing in the first place, which is connect people. And it is based on research. Like it's not there, about in 2018, there was a group of people who did a research project, and they called it Home to Us All. And they explored the literature and all that about how connecting with nature benefits us and the environment. And we're actually working on updating that document this year. And so Nature for All has three kind of key or priorities or core priorities. The first one is weaving communities. And what we mean by that is about connecting people with one another to amplify what they're working. I'm a English major, or I have an English degree, and so my math skills suck. And so I always say that 2 + 2 = 5, but 2 + 2 + 2 can equals 10. And so by connecting people together and finding opportunities for them to collaborate, we can do much more than if we're doing it alone or going it alone. And I think too, it's inspiring to know that you aren't alone, that there's people around the world trying to do what you're doing and promoting similar ideas that you are doing. Just a couple of examples here. So the top photo is actually a screenshot of a video from a garden in Bhutan. About 4 years ago, we received an email from the Royal Botanical Garden in Bhutan wanting to know how to create a more accessible garden. So they reached out to Nature for All. And Yose doesn't know anything about this, but we have a partner based out of Belgium that does exactly that. And so we put them together in contact, they start communicating, and a year and a half later, there's a Nature for All accessible garden in Bhutan, which is kind of pretty cool to me. We provide spaces for these opportunities to weave youth oases. We've done a few now at various conferences or just pavilions. So it allows partners to collaborate on this space. As we all know, trying to put on a pavilion at a conference is expensive, but Nature for All gives you that space and that umbrella, if you will, for partners to join forces to do it collaboratively. We have Sounds of Your Park platform, which is an immersive audio experience of protected places that people can share their music, their recordings from nature. The other one is foster enabling environments. What the heck does that mean? That's a good question, but it's not very good communications branding. But basically, what we mean by that is it provides a space for research and for ideas to grow. By being together, by bringing organizations together, that can happen. So I mentioned Home to Us All. We created a guide on urban nature, and it was actually accompanied by a forest bathing in urban nature document that a PhD or master's student, I believe, wrote kind of collaboratively with this one. And so it just provides space for research to grow and for partners to use that information and advocate for conservation and for nature. And then the final key priority is really the main one, I think, for Nature for All, is what distinguishes it from other groups and communities. Is it's about celebrating love of nature. When Nature for All was started in 2016, a lot of the messaging was very negative. The earth is dying. We're screwing up the earth. It's only earth. And we wanted to focus on the positives that are out there. And so that's what we've tried to do is share the amazing work that's being done across the world, the stories of people who fell in love with nature and are taking action for nature, who are, tirelessly working to bring kids into nature, to connect people with nature, to protect, their nature locally, regionally, and nationally. The map that you see at the top, and I'll show it a bit later, but it's a collaboration that started last year between Esri. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're a geo mapping, like one of the leaders in the world, I believe. And we're working with a college here in Ottawa. And so two students basically built this as part of their course load. And so the idea is to get stories from around the world of love nature stories is what we call them. And so, what's your love moment? What's your love of nature? And what's great is it allows these stories and these to live either on the Nature for All platform, but it's also a link back to your organization's work. So we're not trying to steal work. we're trying to amplify the work that's being done, to amplify the story. So it gives us space for those stories to live in one, to show, all of these amazing stories that are out there. And that's kind of the key piece, I think, that separates us. One of the key pieces that we do every year now is we call them Nature for All Love Fest, which is a celebration of all of these stories. And we encourage organizations to seek stories from their community, to share those stories, and then we offer a place for those stories to be shared collectively. This happens between February 7 and 14. And so we provide tools, resources, the map, and there's guides on how to share your story, what we're looking for. And then we promote partner events. So we encourage the 640 partners to organize events, or to, if they already have events that are already taking place, then we'll promote those, use those as examples of what people can do to connect people with nature. So it just brings it all into one space. So we use the hashtag love nature. I mentioned we promote partner events. And again, it's really about sharing those inspiring stories from around the world. So what can you do? Well, you can share your own story, your own moment. What's also interesting about the map is it doesn't have to be written stories. It can be a video. It can be a photo essay. It can be poetry. We've worked with organizations that do art contests with students and schools, and ask them to share their love. What is their moment, or what do they love about nature? So that's what's really interesting. It's not one medium, but it's all of them. Everybody can share their story through their own way. You can ask your network to share their own story, so you can do your own little event. If one of the ones I like, the idea is that, if I run a national park, you can invite visitors to share their love of this specific national park. Why do I love Yellowstone? Why do I love this park? What is it about this space that I love? So inviting those stories. If you have an existing event that's taking place during that time, we want to amplify or create a new event. Like I said earlier, we have tools and resources that can help you do that, or even just join Nature for All, which is, like mentioned, free and easy to do. And I'll show some of the tools. I'll go through the tools in the story map itself as well, I think, just to show you kind of what we're doing and some of the examples of stories that we've had in the past. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen. So this is on our website. It's embedded on our website. And if there's interest as well, this can be embedded on other websites as well. It doesn't have to live on the Nature for All website. It could live on a variety of other websites. And so it creates a different portal to the same stories from around the world. Again, sometimes I think of ourselves as a wiki, where it's not ours, it's not mine to give, it's out there. That's why it's a hashtag, right? It's a hashtag Nature for All. Nobody really owns it. You own it. The partners own it. And so this is kind of the map. And I wanted to show, you can zoom in. We don't have a search capability, but that's the next step, is doing that. So when you click on one of these little buttons, this is what opens up. And so you can submit your own story. It's really easy. And then we have, the story of this artist. And so this is the organization. Again, we're not stealing it. We're providing the information that already exists. And then you have a short blog or a short story. Maybe it's all the story. Then there's photos, and this is her artwork. And then you can we link back, read more. Right now, this is on the Nature for All blog, but it could link back to an organization's website. So again, it's about amplifying the work that is out there. And so we're working again with the college and Esri this year to work on this a little bit more, add some new capabilities, but also allow us to do a little bit more of the analysis of these stories and what, where they're coming from, what they mean. And then we can also, we have them by different categories and regions, not by country. But once you have a search capability, you'll be able to find, any stories in Los Angeles, any stories in Colorado, any stories in Bhutan, any stories in whatever country. Right now, we have probably about 200 stories. The unofficial, ambitious, and unrealistic goal is 1 billion love nature stories from around the world, because we know they're out there, right? We know everybody, or not everybody, but we all have a story of what I love about nature. When did I fall about nature? Or where's my special moment in nature? And so we want to try to capture those and really showcase, that even though sometimes that, it feels like we're not making any progress, we are collectively. And I think that's what's powerful about this specific tool. And then, so that's what we're amplifying for the Love Fest this year, is really about those stories. And then the other piece that we do have is our Trello board. And so these are all the tools and resources that we've developed over time that can be used by partners. So again, we have the website, we have the story map, we have guidelines on storytelling, we have newsletter and email templates that you can use to promote the Love Fest. We have videos, short videos that promote the Love Fest. We have social media images, and the logo as well is free to use. And again, we use what I like to use is inspired by Nature for All, because you're not collaborating with Nature for All. It's different organizations collaborating together to create something that is inspired by Nature for All. So when you start thinking of Nature for All as a concept, as opposed to an organization, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And I can share all of these if you're interested. I can leave it at that for now. I could talk ad nauseum about this. And Nicole knows that because she was on a call recently where I talked probably for an hour, but
It was a great conversation. Who's got questions for Yose? I know I've got a ton. While you were thinking of questions, Yose, I guess my biggest question is around funding. Like, how is this project funded? And are there any insights that you can share as far as like approaching funders to support this cross-organization project?
so in the past, it's primarily been Parks Canada providing a lot of the funding in terms of, costs for web design and stuff like that. We've transitioned over the last, I'd say, 3 years to identifying some core partners who we've reached out and asked them to provide, I wouldn't call it seed funding, but core partner funding, which is about 10,000 US American, to provide the bare bone minimum, I would say, to run this. So this includes, all of the different hosting and domain names. It's attending conferences, developing printed materials. I have a really cool beanie toque. I don't know if Nicole, did I give you one?
Yeah, I wear it like every day in the wintertime.
So we have, so that's where the money has been used. We are looking at diversifying again in the near future and looking at, and partially because Parks Canada is a federal agency, it's been difficult to try to raise funds for this. That said, the CEC, so the Commission on Education and Communication, over the last year, 2 years, they've leveraged Nature for All specifically to go get funding for projects. So they use Nature for All as a kind of a piggyback on Nature for All to raise funds to do a pavilion at COP in Cali. They did the same thing with a pavilion at the IUCN Congress in Abu Dhabi last year. So that they're leveraging their connection with this and saying, hey, this is what we're doing, but we use this platform to connect what we're doing internationally. So I think that's one of the key pieces that partners can use, is saying, hey, I'm doing this locally, but I'm also part of Nature for All, which is a global initiative. And my work that's being done here, we're going to amplify it. And, when you're seeking funds, I think it's an opportunity to promote the work that or the funders, and saying, hey, we'll give you visibility through the Nature for All global community. So that's one of the ways, but funding is always tricky.
Thank you. Yossi, thank you for your leadership in Parks Canada's leadership in this. This is really fun to learn about, and what a lovely way to think about building support for and interest in all the things that are amazing about nature. I'm curious about adoption. What is if you could like give a curve for adoption in terms of like the partners you have, the over, I think you said 600 partners. What does
Yeah,
that look like? And what have you done along the way that has made that curve jump?
I'm honesty is probably one of my greatest faults. One of the hardest part has been to maintain relationships. And so a lot of the original partners, for example, I wasn't around when Nature for All started in 2016. I started about 6 years ago. And so whenever there's a change in not leadership, but in relationships, it's hard to build up again. So we've lost a lot of relationships over the past. So a couple of things that we've done, we started off, I think, in 2016, I think we signed on about 100 partners, and the goal was only about 50. So there was really an interesting push to do that. Some of the key pieces on when and how we raised our profile, having staff who were dedicated to social media and Instagram certainly helped. I lost that staff about 2 years ago, so now it's only me who's doing all of this. So we had at one point, I did have two other staff members who were working, and one was specifically dedicated to social media, and she was amazing. Our Instagram account blew up, I would say 10 to 15 times what we were doing in terms of followership just in 1 year. And so we built a lot of that. A lot of it is relationships building. Every new partner that joined since I've been around, or I'd say about 90%, I've had one-on-one conversations with. So a lot of that has been, building that relationship, building that trust, and then the difficult part again is maintaining that when you have 650, when you've got one person doing everything. So we've the ups and ticks I think would have been when we're present at events where we're showing visibility, and then you're encouraging people. We've never really done a full on like join Nature for All campaign. It's been more organic, and so the growth I would say has been much more steady than in jumps and spurts.
Yose, could you talk a little bit about the distinction of, like you said, that this is a hashtag. It's not an organization, it's not a separate entity. Could you talk about the decision to maintain that and keep it that way, and like how that benefits you for it to be kind of more of an idea than an entity?
Yeah, I mean, we call it the Nature for All movement, and it's the idea that it's not owned by a specific organization. It's owned by all the partners in it, right? And I think once you divest yourself in something, then it's kind of the idea that if you love it, let it go, and it'll grow. And I think that's kind of the idea behind it, was create a hashtag that everybody can use, and it's one that everybody kind of already does, right? Or agrees, and it's easy to grab onto it when you're doing a campaign about protect our trees. I'm looking at your background, so then I'm just jumping to that. Then it's an easy one to tag on and to your existing campaign, because it automatically makes sense to most people. Nature for all the idea is nature for all for nature, right? But we just kept it at, we sometimes lose sight of that last bit, that it's everybody acting for nature. But I think the idea behind just the hashtag was so that more people can see themselves in it, as opposed to being a top-down approach, but a groundswell of uptake, if that makes sense.
You'd already mentioned how relationships are kind of the core of bringing these partners together, and the challenges that can come with that. What are some other challenges that you've faced in bringing these partners together across organizations, and how have you dealt with that?
I think one of the key challenges is that because nature for all is a bit of a concept, it's a bit nebulous, right? And so trying to get that distinction that you're not partnering with nature for all, you're collaborating with other partners on a nature for all initiative can be a little bit problematic. But I think the biggest challenge, and the one that we're trying to rectify, is the idea that it's a Western Northern effort, that it's not a global effort. So I've had conversations with people in South America and Latin America that don't want it because they see it as coming from the North or coming from Western, and so they don't want to associate with themselves. An interesting conversation I had with somebody from Russia was that nature for all evokes a lot of communism stuff, and so they won't back it like that. If you remember seeing the map, there's a huge gap in that area of the world, and I think part of it is it might not translate very well in a lot of different cultures. So I would say that's one big piece. And I think having an organization, so as mentioned earlier, like the coordinating role will move over to an organization based in India starting April, well, basically starting now, but we're transitioning over. And I'm hoping that a different mindset and a different cultural approach will help Nature for All kind of divest itself from that perspective. I would say that's a big one. It still resonates, I think, from a Western society perspective. Nature for All is an easy one to get behind. I don't know if that answers your question very well. I feel like I'm on the hot seat here.
No, it's definitely great to think about, the different perspectives of the partners that you're trying to engage with in a collaborative campaign, how wording can have different meanings to different people. And also thinking as you're creating a campaign, thinking about ahead of time, who are you trying to reach so that you can have those conversations ahead of the development of your messaging. So that's really great to think about.
I think too, one of the challenges I think we've had is what's in it for me, right? From an organization perspective, what's in it for me to go into this Nature for All? Does it reduce my branding level or my brand recognition if I go under this umbrella? And a lot of times you get that from the larger organizations. They think it'll dilute their brand recognition when in fact it amplifies. For me anyways, it amplifies it because it shows that you're collaborative and it shows that you're not doing this alone, right?
I'm curious if anybody here has participated in the Nature for All or is engaged in any way other than Yose, obviously. Nicole.
Yeah, I met Yose at a Wild 12 in the pavilion, the youth pavilion there. So that was how I learned about the campaign, and I scored a sweet hat out of the deal, and it's been great to be a partner. I haven't done a whole lot of leverage, as Yose has mentioned, capacity and staff time to be able to build new campaign, new events out of that has definitely been a struggle for my organization. But it's something that I'm really excited to try to build on in 2026. We've made it a priority for crowd conservation to do more. And my birthday's on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So I've got some fun ideas of leveraging Love Fest for my organization and for myself. So
from a purely communications perspective, what I would suggest is don't create campaigns specifically for Nature for All. When you're creating your own campaign, you have a checklist, right? Like, what's the hashtags I'm going to use? Who am I going to tag? Who do I want? How am I going to share this? And and this is what I'm working on internally at Parks Canada is a bit of a guide that says when should you tag Nature for All, or how to use Nature for All. And so it's not about recreating or creating something new to align with Nature for All. Is how does your existing work align with? And if it does, like, not everything that you are going to do will align with Nature for All, right? And that's okay. But when it does, and you want to reach out and amplify it through a global community or or you're looking for new partners, or you're looking for a connection, or you're looking to, hey, I'm trying to work on this specifically, but I have a question, right? So use it as a network to weave that community, to amplify the work that you're already doing. And that's where I think where Nature for All can fit.
Yose, could you share an example of where you've seen that done really well?
Well, the one I mentioned of Bhutan was a key one. And well, so here's one. So one that I'm working on right now is at the Congress, we passed a motion which became a resolution to look at measuring the impact of human nature connectedness. So this started off with 17 different organizations who sponsored this motion. Since, I guess, October, this has grown to 70 different people all working together on this. So I think it's finding, leveraging those relationships, and then finding new relationships, and then somebody says, hey, check this out, and you're building on that, and leverage and using that network to build a bigger and stronger network. I'm just trying to think of other examples where I've introduced somebody to somebody else, and which led to a project. And we did at the Africa Protected Areas Congress a few years ago. For example, we organized with the WCPA, the World Commission on Protected Areas. We organized a pavilion, a youth oasis, and we reached out to a number of organizations in Africa who are Nature for All partners, and invited them to be part of this. So, these organizations wouldn't have been able to put up their own pavilion because of the costs, but by collaborating, they can have that space, they can have their logo under the Nature for All umbrella, but they're still getting representation, they're still getting space that otherwise they would not have been able to get on their own. So I think that's the key. That's an example, right? Similar to at Wild 12, again, different organizations came in, whether they provided a few $1,000s to help pay for the space, or just said, we're going to provide support in terms of like staffing support, but then you'll get your recognition on the space for your support for that. Whereas, you would have never been able to do it on your own.
And I'll just underscore what Yose said about, it's all about relationships. And so by starting, a collaborative campaign, it's about the messaging, it's about what you're trying to get out there and create together, but it's also about the relationships you build and how you can connect in different ways outside of a hashtag. I think that that's just really a cool feat. One of the biggest benefits of Nature for All is the network that I've been able to tap into by being a partner with it outside of the communications.
I mean, even the story map that I showed, it started off with just Esri. Like, this was a fluke a little bit. I've been enamored with Esri and their work for a long time, but somebody put me in touch with somebody here, and almost at the same time, they were getting an email from Algonquin College for their students looking to do, I guess it's like a capstone project, right? So they were looking for an opportunity for their GIS students to do a capstone project. And I'd been reaching out to Esri almost at the same time. And it just kind of happened that, hey, here's an idea that we could do. And it worked out. And then for the next phase, we showcased this map at different places and to different people. And now we've got 3 different organizations who are interested in being involved in this next phase that weren't involved initially. And these are global organizations. So it's kind of cool. If you build it, they will come.
That's the hope.
Exactly.
And so, Yose, what advice would you give to someone who is trying to start a collaborative campaign with several of their partners? What are some things that you would suggest that they consider at the beginning of a process like this?
It's unfortunate, but it's always what's in it for them, right? Like, what's in it for me. So what will they get out of joining forces with you, right? And so you have to really think about that, and how do they benefit, and how are you going to make their lives a little bit easier, right? And that's one of the key pieces that I'm always trying to do is I don't want people to do more. because we're already doing so much. It's what if we did it together? Will that lessen your load? And so being helpful and really thinking about what they bring and what you bring to the equation. That's my approach.